Welcome everybody. My name is Daniel Shek. I'm of the Arava Institute and of the Joint Implementation Committee of the Track 2 Environmental Forum. Two branches of a same tree that I'm particularly proud to be part of for many years already. Hope, this word that we like to use so much and which has become so elusive since October 7th. It's become difficult to use it. It's not as if on October 6th it was such a widespread feeling, but you know, everything is relative. And after October 7th it's become really difficult. But one of the things I really like about our organization and I'm quite proud of is that we tend to swim against the current and not to succumb to realities that seem to be overwhelming. And so with Jumpstarting Hope in Gaza, I personally hope that this event can become the first spark of something that will become, excuse the cliche, the light at the end of the tunnel, and eventually at some point, somewhere down the line, a real shining light of a brighter future for all of us in this troubled region. To get us started, I will ask our friend and CEO Tareq Abu Hamad to come to the stage. Tareq is our own expert on renewable energy, on all sorts of important things that he used to and continues to lead for the forum, first as head of the Center for Renewable Energy, and then as academic director, and now for the last few years as CEO. Tareq, thank you very much.
Good morning. Sabah al-khair. May I use this mic here? Is this one working? No. Okay. Okay, good morning everyone. Sabah al-khair for those who are joining us from the West Bank, and I hope also the people that we invited from Gaza. Ambassador Mariam Schurman, the Dutch ambassador to Israel, Ambassadors Dennis Rass, Danny Shek, Chair of the Arava Institute Board, Professor Eilon Adar, Chair of the Public Council, former Knesset member Eti Livni, CEO of Probs, former Knesset member Ksenia Svetlova, CEO of the Abraham Initiatives, Thabet Rass, my friend and colleague, Yarden Lea Leablonka, the Deputy Director of the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation, our friends from different embassies and friends from the United Nations organizations, distinguished guests, friends, and colleagues. This event, the Jumpstarting Hope for Gaza, is also a part of the series that we have for the memory of our friend and colleague, Noam Segal, that he was an expert in the management of transboundary natural resources. I would like to start to thank you all for accepting our invitation and joining us today. It's an honor to welcome you all to the launch of the event Jumpstarting Hope in Gaza. 245 days passed since October 7th. 124 hostages are still in Gaza. 1,557 Israelis were killed, and more than 37,000 Palestinians. Nearly 2 million Palestinians within the Gaza Strip have been displaced from their homes, many multiple times, and around 120,000 Israelis have been displaced from their communities in the country's south and north. Halting this fighting is essential for a comprehensive humanitarian response, a response that will lead to the prevention of the deterioration of the situation. This ceasefire must be linked to a long-term political strategy to ensure lasting success. The politicians of today, on both sides, failed to make difficult political choices. They failed to lay the foundation for lasting resolution to the long-standing conflict. We, Palestinians and Israeli civil society organizations, will not allow this reverberate for generations. We should be part of the framework for Gaza's recovery and doing it in a way that tangibly moves us towards, rather than away from, long-term political resolution of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. We need, also on both sides, a political horizon. Without it, there is no sustainable path out of the suffering and misery we are living and witnessing every day. Regional tensions are very high. The exchanges between Israel and Hezbollah and other armed groups in Lebanon, aerial attacks, the Houthi attacks on the international shipping, and with the recent escalation between Israel and Iran, all further heightening risks of a broader conflict. Despite all of these challenges and uncertainty, Damour for Community Development and the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies propose moving forward now to lay the plans needed for environmental, social, and economic recovery of Gaza. With a proven track record of implementing wash and energy projects in the West Bank and Gaza, this partnership between the Institute, the Arava Institute, and Damour is uniquely positioned to lead the development of off-grid, decentralized wash energy interventions in Gaza with a growing coalition of like-minded and qualified organizations. And again, despite all of these challenges, the Arava Institute with its Palestinian partners continue to deliver life-saving aid under these horrible conditions. It is in all the world's interest to make sure that this part of the world is stable. This is what we do at the Arava Institute. We make hope and build trust, and no one of us has the luxury to give up on things that we believe in. Is it easy? It's not easy. It's an extremely challenging endeavor to conduct transboundary work in such a region that is still navigating its way in this space between war and peace. It's hard. Peace is difficult. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's volatile. It takes a long time. It's hard to find, and it's even harder to hold on to. And why? Because it's about human beings. It's about human beings who've been hurt so deeply, both psychologically and physically. And we still, on both sides, have unimaginably difficult task to overcome the trauma, to reconcile, and to find some means to live side by side with the other, with the enemy. Organizations like Damour and the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies, we really make the difference because we create space, we create safe space for human beings to come together, for researchers, for students, for community leaders to come together. And that's what it is about. It is about humans relating to humans. And we do that through applied science diplomacy, through applied environmental diplomacy, to find a way to overcome the trauma. But that's, again, it's difficult and messy, and doesn't always work from the first time, but we never gave up. The Arava Institute has been doing this for 28 years. We have close to 2,000 alumni in the region. Some of them are here with us today, enabling them to build trust. And when that works, it's extremely powerful. I've seen it. I experienced it. It's so encouraging to see how human beings can change their perspective and eventually their behavior. And the more they succeed, the safer our world is. This war is the clearest evidence to everyone in the world that they can no longer ignore what's happening here. Look at what's happening in university campuses around the world, in the US, in Europe, in the streets all over the world. We are all interconnected. Instability here in this region affects the peaks in the middle of the European continent and also the US. When we strengthen peace here, we strengthen peace in the rest of the world. And now please allow me to thank our partners in this coalition, Damour for Community Development, Engineers Without Borders, the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation, the Multi-Faith Alliance, Commit Me, Gigawatt Global, Athir, Laguna Innovation, Watergen, Green Cake, Sunbucks, Rosanna, the Nova Group, Duke University. And also I would like to thank our Center for Applied Environmental Diplomacy with the leadership, or under the leadership of Dr. David Lerher and his team, Liana, Barak, Evie, Rachel, Shaker, and Joseph. Can you please stand up? Join me thanking them. Jawad. And finally, and most importantly, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our supporters and donors, the EU, the USAID, the Friends of the Arava Institute, the Moskowitz family, Ethan Grossman, Ori Yankelev, Ariana, Lerher, and also our great supporter, Jeff Abramson. Thank you very much, and I wish all of us a successful event.
I have to say, you know, I'm so proud to be part of this partnership. It would have been so easy to slam the door on the immediate aftermath of October 7th. Both sides would have had valid reasons to do so. And the fact that we kept this thread of contact going, thanks to some people in particular, is really a reason to be very proud and a first spark of hope. So thank you, Ashraf, and all our colleagues and friends at Damour. We're looking forward to renewing our joint work with energy. To get our program really going, I'm going to invite two people to the stage who each in their own way embody this possibility of dialogue and of future cooperation, even under the current stress. So please welcome to the stage Maoz, Inon, and Amira, Mohammed. Please come here. So Maoz Inon is an award-winning Israeli social entrepreneur and peace activist, and the founder of several tourism initiatives within Israel and the Middle East. Amira is a peace activist and co-creator and co-host of the immensely successful podcast Unapologetic, The Third Narrative. Thank you for being here. And these guys are going to talk to each other without the help of anybody, so you just go ahead.
Wow. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for attending. I want to say salam and shalom. Salam to the land that was created for peace and never saw a day of peace. Yet. I usually choose the places that I speak very carefully, but this one was a no-brainer for multiple reasons. Obviously, everyone that is attending, the people behind this, and when I saw the logo of my very good friends from Gaza, Sunbox, by the Masharawi family. And also, I'm very honored today to speak right next to my very good friend, Maoz Inon, and I would love if you could start.
Yeah, I feel home here. I feel home with great friends in front of me and with the amazing Amira next to me. After losing my both parents on October 7th, I started a series of interviews in Israel and all over the world. And in the beginning, I was saying all the time that nothing can prepare you. Nothing can prepare you to lose both your parents, so many of your childhood friends, their parents, their children that will be killed during one day or will be kidnapped to Gaza. And then a few weeks after, I realized that I was wrong. I was wrong. All my life was just a preparation. Just a preparation, what to say and how to act after such a tragedy. And ironically and sadly, I was prepared by my parents. My parents prepared me for the moment of their death. I was born in a kibbutz, kilometer half from Gaza, kibbutz Niram. And my father was a farmer, an admirable farmer. And it's difficult to be a farmer if it's in Gaza, in Israel, or all over the world. It's very difficult to be a farmer. And I remember like it was yesterday, that my father is sharing the challenges in the fields, if it's the insects, or the droughts, or the floods, or the cold. But at the same sentence, he's also saying, but next year, I'm going to sow wheat again. Because next year is going to be better. But it's up to me to make it better. I will get the best seeds, and I will fertile the land, and I will open it to the rain to come, and I will let nature do its part. But no one else will do it if it won't be me. And I've been going through a spiritual transformation in the last 8 months. And one of those days, I could see into my organs and cells, and I could see the way they are programmed. And it was very clear to me that my cells know that the future is going to be better, but it's up to them to make it. And my mom, she was a very talented artist. In the recent years, she was painting mandala. And even though my parents' house was burned to ashes with them inside, her studio was saved. And in the only mandala she gave me, she painted, we can fulfill all our dreams if we have the courage to chase them. And I have one for each one of you, if you want at the end. Amira, one is for you.
Thank you so much.
And all the people here in this room are courageous and brave. We are the brave people that will take our people into the future. And among these really brave people that I met along my journey, following the Star of Peace on the road to peace, I met the amazing Amira. And when Amira, as a Palestinian, starts sharing and amplify my cry, my sorrow, my pain, but also my dreams, it's touched me in a way that I cannot describe in words. So I really thanks for this opportunity to Arava Institute and Damour for giving me the opportunity on this honorable stage to thank you, Amira. Thank you.
I mean, I don't know how I'm going to follow that, but so before I met Maoz, and before I was actually more public about my peace work, I was only a young girl living in East Jerusalem. And that's all I knew. I know that the book here says a line in the sand. And East Jerusalem felt like there's many borders, but East Jerusalem had physical borders and also invisible borders in the sand. And I never knew anything else. All I knew was the occupation and my small East Jerusalem. I remember seeing riots. I remember the first time I encountered an Israeli was when I came home from school to see the partial demolition of my house. And that's when I first saw soldiers. And then I graduated and I went to the West Bank to study. I graduated high school and I went to study in the West Bank. Also, different kind of reality. Because you start meeting new Palestinians, not just yourself in East Jerusalem. And ironically enough, That's when I first started to get introduced to the peace building field. Recommended by friends in the West Bank, by Palestinians in the West Bank from Ramallah. And at the age of 18, I met my first normal Israeli. I met my first actual Israeli colleague. And believe it or not, even if we live 15 minutes away from each other, we only met online. Before Zoom, it was Facebook chat. On Messenger, just talking about normal life. And I understood how not normal our reality is. How not normal even the most privileged one of us does not live a normal life. And that deserves to end. And on October 7th, all of our lives changed in many different ways. And I questioned everything that I have done. It's like, maybe it was all for nothing. It's okay to say that we were hopeless, if we are still hopeless. And this is called jumpstarting. I keep on saying that hopelessness is what I felt, is because I felt that I have failed. And that's true. And I know Maoz was very optimistic and the good cop, but I'll be the bad cop and say that we all failed. Every single one of us. We never jumped. We walked, we crawled, and we waddled. But we never jumped. We were never active about it. We were never radically hopeful, never radically wanted peace as a demand. And that's exactly what we promote in the third narrative and then through the podcast Unapologetic, that we are unapologetically who we are, our identities, whether it's Israeli or Palestinian, whether it's Maoz or anyone sitting in this room, and to promote allyship, that we don't stand only the logos on that participated here. We all have to be unified because we need to change. And Maoz is showing that in every single thing that he does. And that's why wherever his peace star guides him, I will follow.
And so following the Star of Peace for 8 months, I learned 3 fundamental lessons that I would love to share on the stage here. 2 of them I learned from Hamza Awoude, the most amazing Palestinian peace activist and makers.
He really is.
And in one of the interviews he gave, the host asked him, Hamza, where do you find hope? How can you find hope? And Hamza said straight away that he don't find hope. He create hope. Hope is an action. Hope is an action. And the formula to create hope is very simple, even though it might be difficult to execute. We create hope together. This is what we are doing here. We are creating hope by envisioning a better future and by acting to make this future into reality and checking and proving that our actions are effective. It's as simple as that. Because if we are effective and there is an impact to our action, we're going to reach this future. So it's very simple to create hope. And thank you, Arava Institute and Damour, for creating hope here today and creating hope for 26 years. I think you are amazing. The second lesson, I learned that the 65 kilometer from the shore of Tel Aviv to the shore of Gaza are today as wide as ever. They are never, the distance, 65 kilometers were never that far away. But, and it's the biggest but I ever encountered in my life, there is a miracle. There is a miracle we meet in the future. The Israelis and Palestinians meet on a shared future based on equality and dignity, shared recognition and acknowledgement, reconciliation and healing, and of course, security and safety. And this is again, sorry for praising Arava Institute and Damour all the time, but this is exactly the future that you are creating now for more than 20 years. Today, here, it's a projection of the future. And we have a simple task, a very simple task, to bring our people to this future. And here in the bottle, the small bottle, I have the formula. This is serious. I have the formula. I hope we'll have time. Maybe Barak will need to give us 2 more minutes. I have the formula how we're going to make peace between the river and the sea. But the most difficult lessons I learned is the lesson of forgiveness. Listening to Hamza saying that he's willing to forgive about the past, he's willing to forgive about the present, but he won't forgive, nor to himself and to no one else, if he won't create a better future. And I've decided to forgive. I've decided to forgive. I've decided to forgive those who killed and murdered my parents and my friends. I've decided to forgive Hamas. And I've decided to forgive those who are accountable to the death of my parents, who promised us and again and again, again and again, security and safety. I've decided to forgive the Israeli government. I'm now only focusing on the future. And I'm looking forward to the near future because on Sunday, I will be hosted by Amira and Ibrahim in their amazing podcast. So if you think I'm nervous now, it's nothing compared to Sunday.
Lastly, unless you have something to add after that, if we have time.
How are we going to make peace?
I would like to say that maybe the only faces and voices that you hear might be the face and voice of Maoz Inon, or the face and voice of the Palestinians like me maybe. But we're not the only ones. A very big example is actually a program that brought me to where I'm sitting right now, under the Paris Center, which is Yalla Young Leaders. It is what got me, it was my first door. It was my first door. And we had a semester we're in the middle of a semester right now, and it's the most we've ever had of Gazans. From Gaza. Join us once a week, if they have internet, and update us that they're still alive, that they're still here, and ask about the other people that are from the Middle East and North Africa region, and also from Israel and others from Palestine. So if you don't see it or don't hear it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. We're not a sole voice. There are many people here and outside of this room that believe that we all deserve better. And we're all going to fight for that. The formula?
Yeah. So I want to share with you the formula, how we're going to make peace by the year 2030. It's not
No
gonna
pressure.
It's not going to happen in our lifetime or generation. It's going to happen soon. And I would like to share you the story of this battle. My father was an admirable farmer, start dreaming with his colleague about a sesame that will be harvested by a machine, by a combine. Because his colleague was visiting Ethiopia back in 2008, and he learned that there are 10 millions of dunam of sesame that are being cultivated in Ethiopia, 2 million just for the consumption in Israel, and all those millions are being harvested by hand. They are producing only 35 kilo per dunam, and they start dreaming about a sesame that will be harvested by combine. And then they start writing the values of this sesame: high production, acclimatized for the Israeli agriculture, high nutrition, and of course that a machinery will be able to harvest it. And then they built a coalition, a very strong coalition of universities, research centers, professors, farmers, and students. And then they had a roadmap, how to create this, to bring this dream, unimaginable dream, into reality. And this was never achieved. Peace is easy. Peace is easy. We achieved peace with our biggest enemy, Egypt. We achieved peace with Jordan, our only secure and safe borders. And peace was achieved around the world by humanity, in Rwanda, North Ireland, in Europe. In Europe, war was waging in Europe 80 years ago. Millions, tens of millions were killed. And now, I think this Sunday, all those nations are voting to the EU election. So peace is an easy dream, easy to achieve. But this sesame was never achieved. And the roadmap was that they will harvest this imaginary sesame by the year 2005. And then, of course, they start execute it. And I'm very happy to announce that they were ahead of time in 2 years. This sesame oil was harvested in October, mid-October, in Kibbutz Shiller near Rehovot, and I will write from the label. Yacobi sesame was cultivated in the Faculty of Agronomy in Rehovot as a supreme type, rich with production and oil, acclimatized to the Israeli agriculture. We dedicate this sesame to Yacobi Inon, agronomist, consultant, loving and working the land, honest, humble, and a good person. And this is exactly how we're gonna make peace. We have the dream, we have our shared values. We are here now building, threatening, and growing our coalition. We have a roadmap to amplify our voices, to build our legitimacy, and we are executing. And on July 1st, we're gonna do the biggest peace event that was held in Israel in the last 20 decades in Echal Menorah Yad Eliyahu, the big peace event. It's about time. It's about time to end the war. It's about time to make peace. Thank you.
I need you to find another formula, how to clone you guys.
We are working on it. They are alive. Thank you.
I'm sorry to for this little diversion. Some of you may know that since October 9th or 10th, I've been involved with a forum of families of hostages and missing persons. A place where you'd think, the last place you'd think you'd find hope. But what you just saw is exactly the experience that I have at the forum, is that the people who objectively find themselves in the most hopeless situation are also the people who are maybe most capable of producing hope, as you said so. So yeah, that's actually all I wanted to say. The day after. That is the title of our next panel. Not unlike hope, the day after is not the most popular term in Israel, certainly not for the Israeli government. Sometimes, and again, it's a little bit the feeling you get at the Forum of Families, this period started off, you know, some people thought it was a sprint, you know, it'll be over in a few days or a few weeks. And then it turned out to be a marathon. And now it's actually a strange kind of marathon because the finish line seems to be moving backwards all the time, which makes it very difficult for the runner because you don't know actually when this is going to end. So that is why it's so important to envision a day after and to try and think what it will be, when, how it can look like. Try and imagine things that seem out of reach for the moment. In order to do this, I'm going to invite three amazing and distinguished panelists. First of all, Ambassador Dennis Rass, an old friend of the Institute, and probably the oldest friend of peace in the Middle East that I have known. Really, I mean, you know, I can read all this bio, but the most important part is that this is a man who has been dedicated to making peace in the Middle East for so many years, and is a walking reservoir of know-how and of determination. And the fact that after so many years you still haven't given up should inspire all of us for much hope. Please, Dennis, come and join me. Much, yeah, wherever you want. Much less longevity, but just as much dedication is my friend, former member of Knesset, Ksenia Svetlova. A wonderful person. The only person I know who speaks fluent Arabic with a heavy Russian accent. She is, again, very devoted, very full of hope, funny, optimistic, I think that would say. And people, these days, people ask me how many optimists do you know? And I remind them that real optimists are those who remain optimistic even when there's no tangible reason for it. So Ksenia, who is now CEO of Ropes, an amazing organization in itself, please come and join us. And last but not least, Thabet Abu As. There you are. Dr. Abu As is co-executive director of the Abraham Initiatives, promoting equality and Jewish-Arab partnership in Israel. He holds a PhD in regional development and Middle East studies from University of Arizona, and is a former lecturer at Ben Gurion University and Sapir College, and has done so many amazing things for dialogue and cooperation between the totality of citizens of this country, regardless of their religion or ethnicity or whatever. He is a great advocate and fighter for the rights of Bedouins in Israel, and we welcome you to this. So, at first I'm going to ask the three of you to restrain yourself and not jump into the day after, but to start with a step that I think will be necessary before we go there. And that is to imagine how people of this region will be able to recuperate from what has been the most traumatic period in the recent history of this region. Is it at all possible, humanly, to go back to something else after you've lived so much trauma on both sides? Maybe I'll start with you, Dennis. Why not? You don't live here, but you know us so well.
The truth is, it's probably the most important question to ask. We can imagine all sorts of things, but unless you reestablish a human connection, which I just saw with the two of you, which is amazing. Trauma, it basically shapes pain. Trauma keeps you completely self-absorbed. You understand your pain, you have no capacity to relate to the other side's pain. And we have parallel traumas right now. Israelis, every time I come, it's still October 7th. Partly because of trauma, largely because of the hostages, a daily reminder, but also the absence of an explanation and accountability. It makes this still October 7th. For Palestinians, the character of the death and destruction every day means they're living the trauma. So when you have parallel traumas, the ability to relate to each other is almost non-existent. You need symbols of it, like the two of you, to show that it's possible to get beyond it. But you need to come up with what is a way to allow each side to express to the other what they're feeling. You know, one of the things that has always been lacking here has been the ability to create platforms or forum where Israelis and Palestinians can explain to each other why they feel what they feel. This is an emotional, psychological part of the conflict that basically doesn't get addressed. And especially where we are now, because of the mutuality of trauma. As I said, it's completely self-absorbing. You know, being able to create public forum where each side can sort of say, this is why we feel what we feel. Partly, each side needs to be able to have a release, a public release. That creates its own kind of catharsis. It's a cleansing. But each side needs to be able to have the cleansing, and each side needs to be able to hear the other. Because right now, there is no dialogue. And if there were a political dialogue right now, it would be a dialogue of the deaf. Believe me, I've taken part in plenty of those. I know what they're like. So we need a place to start. And one of the places to start is to have that kind of a think about how you create more forum. In a sense, I mean, I love the inspiration that the two of you provide. And I want you to be representative of everybody. But I still think there's a need for people to be able to express what they're feeling. And we need to think about how you do that. The virtue of what today represents, it's a signal that, you know, Palestinians and Israelis actually can cooperate. That's been totally lost. So being able to reestablish just the principle that cooperation is possible, it's hugely important. But we need to think about how we can also create these different platforms to allow this psychological release that is going to have to be addressed at some point.
Thank you. Ksenia, you run an organization that is all about you know, dialogue and cooperation and living together and all that. How traumatic were these months for the organization, and how do you feel about healing?
First of all, good afternoon, good morning, sabah al-khair. It's good to be among friends. I heard in the morning when we just gathered, many people, that without even listening to one voice on the stage, they already felt better, because it's good to be among people who understand you. There is a lot of value on working to trying to convince the other, those who don't understand, who don't think like us. But I think we also need a moment to be with ourselves, to be with people who are single-minded, to understand that there is a strength in just being together and to understand collectively what can we do about it. I would like to say that there is, of course, I acknowledge the empathy gap. I actually authored a piece recently about this reality, when we cannot allow ourselves to feel anything because we are already feeling too much. You want to just be numb. And this is something that I think happened to many of us. At some point, you cannot absorb anymore. You feel that this is enough, basically. I want to shut down, you know, the television, the internet. I don't want to see these awful videos from both sides. This is a reality. And
most of all, I don't want to see the suffering of the other side.
Yes, there are the suffering of the other side, but you know what?
Side.
Even my side, you know, I can tell you frankly, I'm listening more and more to podcasts these days, other than news. And I used to be news addict. I'm a journalist, professional journalist, you know, so for me, not to listen news 24/7, this is a departure from something that I used to be me for the, you know, whole of my life, you know, so this is where we are. And undoubtedly, the October 7 had changed us already. There is no coming back to where we were before, in a way, you know, so there can be some healing, but we also have to understand that this trauma, it will be a part of our lives. And how do we deal with it? You know, I remember very well as a journalist who covered the Intifada, and I covered Ramallah and Gaza, you know, the West Bank, of course, all the time. And suddenly Intifada stopped. It's not something that happened in one day, it was a process, but still, suddenly the reality became better. And you saw shops being open and roads repaired from the signs of the tanks in them. And suddenly even Israelis who were not allowed to go into the cities in the 8 territories, suddenly they went because they weren't afraid anymore. And yet, deep down, if you would, you know, like check, you know, psychologically the profile of these people, these events, the events, blood events of the Intifada, changed them completely. So if we will not address this change, profound change, and understand Yet that perhaps with all of this earning to be starry-eyed again about peace, and we were, so for people who are a little bit perhaps older, those on the stage, we do remember, me as a school child in the 90s, to be starry-eyed, to be fascinated about this prospect of something that will completely different. And we discussed it a lot, with the network of ropes that includes now a representative of 11 Arab countries, and of course, Palestinians from everywhere, West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, diaspora, and Israelis also from everywhere, about how, understanding this, we still can work with each other. And I can tell you now, the answer is clear. So if you are centering yourself, if you are focusing on something that is very real, it can be business, it can be work in the, in environment, because they produce a reality. You make the reality that you want to see. And by changing it, this is the most powerful tool. You can talk about your trauma till, the end of times. You can talk about what's unfair, what was done to you, but it will not change. It will not change the reality. Reality is only being changed by powerful deeds. And each deed is powerful, even if it's changing a life of one person only. So for us right now, for example, working on something very small, but we are praying that it will, happen, something that has to do with providing solar panels to the Palestinians in Gaza, individual solar panels, the small ones, that can change the life of maybe 10 families, 50 families, 1,000 families. This is how you change, the reality. This is how you change the mindset. And again, you mentioned my Russian accent. So the country where I came from, I grew up hating Germans. I did not hate them to the degree that I wanted to kill them, right? But, recalling what they did to my family, my grandmother, was a descendant, she really lived Holocaust herself, basically. You were immersed in this trauma, collective trauma that is still ongoing, and the government, of course, there is using it very much to do so. But at the same time, when I was a child in the 80s, it was normal already to go to Germany, to have business with the Germans, because we knew that Germany was not a threat anymore. And Russia was not a threat to Germany. Maybe it is now. But again, things change. But what I just want to say that by changing bricks by brick, how you build a building, you take bricks, you put them together, and by building this, assembling these bricks together, this is, you have a building, and then a person who is traumatized, who cannot believe, he looks at this, oh, this is very different. Perhaps there is a chance, not only because we say that we believe in peace, we actually make peace.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ksenia. Beautiful. Thabet, your organization has done so many amazing things in Israeli society. It's maybe of all the organizations the one that is on the most human level, individual human level. So how does an organization like this live through trauma so big as we've lived since October?
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. Actually, I moved from my job as a co-executive director of the Abraham Initiatives, an NGO that have been working for promoting equality and integration between Jews inside Israel. I just finished my job on 30th of April, and I moved to, not still without a job, but the activity, how to make peace between my people, the Palestinians, and my country, Israel. Well, inside Israel, so far, thanks God, we didn't kill each other, okay? We live with each other, and I believe that we really succeeded, and we built half-shared society, I would say, inside Israel. Things are moving in the last decade in the right direction. The life of Arab citizens inside Israel is much better than a decade ago. Yet there is a discrimination in Israel, there is a racism and so forth, and we have to fight that. Well, I think in the macro level, this is what's important. We must talk, Palestinians and Israelis. I have to tell you that victimization, it's not a word. I'm saying that to my people, Palestinians, especially in Gaza, but also to my colleagues in Israel. Victimization is not a working plan. We must talk, And I'm coming this morning with a message to you. Yes, from Gaza, from my aunt, 85 years elderly aunt, that asking you to do all necessary means to stop the war. My 85 elderly aunt actually deported. It was witnessed the Nakba of 1948. Is used to live exactly in Zikim, Kibbutz Zikim, which was Haribia, a Palestinian village, and moved to Jabalia refugee camps inside Gaza, and already moved 4 times within Gaza, and here she lost her house, and she asking to stop the war and let us talk. We have to talk. We don't have other options. We don't have other options. Jews here to stay, Palestinians here to stay, and we have to find a way to live together. This is one thing. The other thing, I think we can learn from the experience of other nations. Yes, the atrocities of 7th of October. Nothing can justify what happened in the 7th of October. And the events of 7th October cannot justify the continued killing in Gaza today. So we have to talk with each other. In Europe and other places, even more extreme events took place, and nations knew how to overcome such events. I understand that both people live in trauma and post-trauma, but what we have to find a way to talk with each other. This is right now. What we should be done, what should be done, I will elaborate.
Thank you very much. Keep the microphone, because I'm going to continue with you, Thabet. Going to do a reverse order now. And now you can set your imaginations free, and let's talk about what the day after could be, should be, etc. And since we don't have that much time for the panel, I would ask each of you to concentrate on a particular perspective. And I will start with you, Thabet, because it's more the local aspect of Israel and now Palestine, as you said. I will ask you, Ksenia, to take it a little bit to the regional perspective, and you, Dennis, I'm sorry, you are such a globetrotter and an international. You will give us a more global perspective, if possible. So, Thabet, the day after, in 3 to 4 minutes.
Yeah, the day after should give hope for both people, for the Israelis and for Palestinians. Unfortunately, actually there are several or dozens of UN resolutions and the two-state solution and so forth. It's about time to think out of the box. I think we should adopt a new terminology. Honestly, this place is not only my country. This is my homeland. Shaul Chernyakhovsky, when he immigrated to Israel, to Eretz Israel, to Palestine in 1933, he came here and he wrote a poet, Hoy artsi molati har trashim kireach. Probably most of you in this age know this song, Hoy artsi molati shar. But he saw barren hills, har trashim kireach. In the same year, Ibrahim Toukan, the Palestinian poet, saw something else. He talked Mautini, Mautini, my homeland, the beauty of my homeland. Yet both of them living here in Palestine, in Israel. So we should think about this place as a homeland. Homeland for both people, for Jews as well as Palestinians. I don't have time to think about kicking the settlers and so forth. I have time to think about that. Everybody live between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean should live equal in democratic regimes that based in the two-state solution. If you ask me if the traditional two-state solution will work, no, it's not going to work. Just think about it. The two-state solution thing, we are here and they are there. Who are we? Am I we or there? Okay? The dual identity that I have, I'm an Israeli and I am a Palestinian, okay? For me, the homeland is the most important thing. Yes, the state is very important. I am part of the state. I am paying taxes. I'm teaching in Ben Gurion University and so forth. However, I think we should try to think about two states with one homeland, okay? This is why I'm a member of a board member of the the two states, one homeland. Okay, I think this is the right thing to think about the whole area, okay, but not to try to think in terms of the exact place. We can share everything here. We can share Jerusalem, we can share the land, and there is enough room for everybody. There is enough room for one more Jewish newcomers, Olim. There is enough room, but there is enough room for millions of Palestinian refugees. We have to think about it. We have to solve the problems, all of the problems, okay? So we need a new common sense, okay? We have an opportunity now. I know that under this government, we cannot imagine such solution. But honestly, this is if we really eager to solve the problems, we have to think about lasting peace, comprehensive and lasting peace that take in its consideration the whole region as one unit, as the homeland for Jews and for Palestinians.
Thank you, Thabet. So, Ksenia, clearly just pacifying the border area between Gaza and Israel would be insufficient. Not something that could make us hope anything more than just another ceasefire. So, does the region have something to offer in order to stabilize this situation a bit beyond just a ceasefire?
So yes, Thabet, my friend, now mentioned a lot of times the word region. And when I think about region, I think about greater Middle East that is integrated and the powers of moderation are working together against the other bloc, the powers of destabilization. And in this regard, we either, we will work together and we will win this battle, or we will go down, each one in their turn, but it will happen. So when I'm looking at the region, I'm seeing their partners who want the same things as us, as Israelis and as the Palestinians. We want integration, we want stability, we want rights, we want justice, and we want peace. And when I'm looking around, first of all, what I'm seeing now in the Middle East, it's a tremendous change that took place during the last 20, 25 years, I would say. You will see how after 9/11, after the war in Iraq, after Arab Spring, and after ISIS, this region is being reshaped completely. And what the Israelis are missing today, and I'm Israeli, so I'm part of this country, but the leaders of this, of our people, the leaders of our society, what they're missing today is that the countries around us, they can be not only partners for, successful tourism or trade in oil or something like this, but of rebuilding our future together, finally, after years when the region was indeed active, but perhaps in a more negative ways, propping violence, paying the salaries of the militias and so on. And after that time, the region decided to disengage from us. I remember very well by 2007, you Dennis know this period excellent, when the Arab League reconfirmed again the Arab Peace Initiative, which Israel, by the way, never said yes to, any leader of Israel until now.
Or no.
I hope that,
say anything.
I hope that there will be brave leaders that will be able to say publicly yes to this initiative, because it's still alive, amazingly, but it's still alive. But when the Arab League said, okay, we support it, but we will not actively do anything in order to make it work. Then when in 2007, I think we missed the chance for peace, that was really on the table. But what happened that, because of the traditional mindset that said, well, it's better to take another side, better not to be involved in this. Now the region finally understood after 10/7, it's all connected. It's all connected. If there will be turmoil in Gaza, you cannot live safely right now in Riyadh or in Morocco or in any place else. It will be destabilized. But what is happening in Gaza? Whoever was thinking in Israel or in the Arab capitals that you could just let things roll as they are, maybe rebuke Israel from time to time, maybe Israel said, these things or another, but I think that now it's absolutely clear, with this wave of demonstrations, engagement of the young people, the very clear message that the civil society that was repressed for so long in the Arab world, it's sending to its leaders a clear message. Things have to change. So either these leaderships will take this chance and will work again with the brave, courageous next Israeli leadership, because unfortunately we know the situation right now. It's a destructive leadership that brings us closer to the abyss. The same needs to happen on the Palestinian side. To understand how we can use effectively the power of the region. And we do know about the moderate forces in Morocco, the abilities of the king to influence specific issues here and there in the very precise matter of the Al-Bireh Bridge crossings, for example. We know how Egypt contributed for years to dissolving, the pressures and the tensions that used to be. Jordan on the Temple Mount. Other countries, that they have this ability. They don't know yet how to use it. Either we will find a way to use it and reintegrate both Israelis and the Palestinians, not only as victims, as partners. This is important. The victimization continues, it's ongoing. It doesn't do well also to the Palestinians. They need to, again, with the dignity, to know that they are equals with the Israelis and with the rest of the Arab world around us, the MENA region. This is the only way that I see for peace.
Thank you. Yeah, so, Israelis and Palestinians have been at each other's throats for so long. You might think that the world will say, just let them fight each other. We'll find a way around this region, live with it, in a sense, give up on us. Do you think the world will give up on us? Should it?
Well, I can give you a one-word answer, which is no.
But you will have to explain.
Look, one of the things we've just seen with this conflict is, you have two major waterways, two international waterways in this region that Iran actually has some control over now. One is the Strait of Hormuz, the other is the Bab el-Mandeb. Egypt is losing about 40% of its revenue because of what the Houthis are doing in the Red Sea. The electric vehicles from China being exported to Europe, disrupted by this. Supply chains internationally affected, disrupted by this. So this war is a reminder that you can't ignore the region. The war was a reminder for a lot of the Gulf states. They can't ignore this. They felt basically, okay, and I've been hearing it for the last decade, the Palestinians don't have a leadership that is prepared to do anything for themselves. Why should we deny ourselves what's in our interest to have relations with Israel when these Palestinian leaders won't do anything for themselves? The rest of the world got accustomed to it as well. And suddenly everybody gets a wake-up call. Turns out, the world actually is flat. There actually is this kind of interconnection, the globalization, which is now rejected by kind of populist reaction, but it can't escape the reality that there are these connections that are not going to go away. So it's not simple to ignore this region, but it's also not easy to say that the outside world can settle this conflict, because it can't. I mean, anything that's imposed won't last, because neither side will, if they have no stake in it, they're not going to live with it. The first possibility of defection, they'll defect. So I always have said, I don't know how many times I've spoken to the Arava Institute, but I think the first time I spoke to you, I said, this is a conflict that can only be settled top down and bottom up. If it's one top down, it's not going to work. If it isn't bottom up, it's not real. What has to happen, the reason the work here is so important is not just what I was saying before. It's not just that you have to reestablish the idea that Israelis and Palestinians can work together again. That's been lost and it has to be reestablished. It has to be seen. You need tangible projects. How often have I said, Debbie, shovel-ready projects. You have to have tangible projects that people can see that are the result of Israelis and Palestinians working together. That's a starting point. By the way, it ends up sort of providing, ironically, some inspiration for the outside. There's an irony here. The international community understands now you can't ignore this conflict. But the international community today, is there an international community? No, just like what you're getting in the region. We have what amounts to one coalition, which is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. And they're geared towards trying to create a disruption and a set of, it's not that the Chinese don't believe in a set of rules, they just want the rules to be their rules. And the Russians right now, Putin just wants to redefine what the landscape of Europe is going to be. And Iran wants to transform the region because it can't transform Iran itself. So it actually seeks a kind of regional hegemony, partly because it thinks its historical culture and legacy justifies it, partly because this is a regime, as I said, that has almost no legitimacy on the inside. So it shifts things to the outside. North Korea is in a class by itself. But, where does Russia today get its weapons? Iran and North Korea. So that represents one basic coalition. The Biden administration, why did it change on Saudi Arabia? I mean, the president came in with one very clear set of attitudes, and he changed. Why did he change? Okay, so one of the reasons is Putin tries to absorb Ukraine, and there's an understanding, well, if we want to limit the revenue that goes to Russia, we need to create alternatives to the oil and natural gas that it provides. By the way, the Russia will not get back the natural gas customers that it's lost. This again is.
I do not represent the Russian state.
I'm not.
Because you turned to me.
No,
Said just the opposite.
No, I turned to you not because you represent the Russian state, but because I knew you were sympathetic to what I was saying. I'm happy to turn to you, by the way. But the point is, the America changed, the Biden administration changed because it realized there is now a larger competition that's going to take place for some time to come, and it was important that the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Gulf states, are part of this coalition and not linked to the other one. But this gets back to the regional point. You can, if there's normalization with Saudi Arabia, what we can see is there will be a Palestinian component. There has to be. Because the Saudis, in the end, maybe it wouldn't have been this way before, but after October 7th, whatever it is they are going to require for their own purposes will require a Palestinian component. And because Israel is now facing an Iranian set of proxies who have produced a 7-front war. And you saw on the night of April 13th, April 14th, for the first time in Israel's history, the Israeli ethos has always been, we defend ourselves by ourselves. And on the night of April 13, 14, 1/3 of all the drones and cruise missiles were intercepted by non-Israelis. The US, Britain, France, Jordan, the UAE and the Saudis contributed. There's an umbrella here. If Israel had to intercept an additional 100 of the projectiles that had been fired at Israel, it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. It would have spread its resources much more thinly. It would have been more difficult for Israel to succeed. So you have the concept of a regional coalition is no longer an abstraction. So here's a way for Israel to actually have a counter-strategy against Iran. And it needs a counter-strategy against Iran. And for the United States to help continue to shape it, because the region isn't disconnected from the larger global competition, which is the essence of what you asked. I want to say one thing that you didn't ask, only because I have the mic. One thing I'll tell you, if I had to do Oslo over again. The idea that you never learn lessons, and Amira, what you said, we all failed. I failed. You think I know? I carry that with me every day. I failed. But if you don't learn lessons from your failures, people never learn lessons from their successes. They overread their successes and they misread them. But if you don't learn lessons from your failures, you don't learn at all. One of the fundamental things that was lacking was both sides recognized each other in a factual way, de facto. Neither side recognized the legitimacy of the other. Israel never recognized that the Palestinians as a people have a right to self-determination. And the Palestinians never recognized that there's a historic Jewish connection to the land. And there is, the Jewish people have a right to self-determination. Having both sides recognize the legitimacy of the other is a fundamental step for us being able to resolve this. That hasn't happened. And if everything we've experienced in the last 8 months doesn't teach us that we have to think a little differently and that the issue of legitimacy has to be addressed directly, then we will fail to learn the lessons that we have to from what can only be described as something that is absolutely catastrophic. There's no other way to describe what's happened since October 7th, on October 7th and since.
Wow, thank you. I'm tempted to go on with this, but I'm afraid that I'll get fired by Barak. I'll just end this much too short panel with two thoughts. One of them is that I hope that next year's event will be called The Day After the Day After. And to remind everybody that wars are not won on the battlefield. Only battles are won on the battlefield. Wars end beyond the battlefield. They need a diplomatic, political, economic, and, as you just pointed out, a very profound human dimension. This is what we as peace builders, believers in peace, should go out and spread to our friends. It is not enough to be strong. You have to use your strength in order to show humility. Thank you. We'll take a break now for a few refreshments and reconvene in 15.
The conflict between Palestinians and Israelis takes a toll, not only on human rights, freedom, dignity, and personal safety, but also on the environment. One such example can be found in the story of Al-Bireh, where through applied environmental diplomacy, a natural resource dispute was turned into a glimmer of hope. A wastewater treatment plant in Al-Bireh, Palestine, near Ramallah, treats 5,000 to 7,000 cubic meters of wastewater a day. The treated water could be used for agriculture, but instead is dumped into Wadi Muhmas. It mixes with raw sewage, polluting a nature reserve and aquifer. Instead of improving the lives of the local population, it makes them worse. Over 15 years ago, a proposal was approved by the Israeli-Palestinian Joint Water Committee to capture the treated water and pipe it down to the Jericho Valley for use by Palestinian farmers. In 2017, The Track 2 Environmental Forum, a partnership between the Arava Institute for Environmental Studies based in Israel and the Palestinian NGO Damour for Community Development, decided to act. The team highlighted a long-standing problem in getting a building permit for the trunk line, which was leading to this stalemate. The Israeli Civil Administration and the Palestinian Water Authority could not agree on the 30-kilometer trunk line route through Area C. This is where the Track 2 team stepped in.
Due to lack of trust and communication, by 2017, the Israeli Civil Administration and the Palestinian Water Authority, they are not talking to each other, and the project has been stopped. Our role was just to build the bridges of trust between the two parties and to show the will of the Palestinians. I represented the Palestinian Water Authority and showed that there is a need for the water for the farmers, and we can mitigate the climate change and solve the water shortage in the region. 3 routes has been discussed in the Palestinian Water Authority, bringing the water from the highlands to the lowlands, where the water is needed, where the farmers can use this treated water. They cannot survive without the water resources.
The Track 2 team took the map to the head of the wastewater division in the Palestinian Water Authority to ask which route would be acceptable. He gave the team a report suggesting they remove his name from it. The Palestinians were not talking directly to the Israelis.
The Israeli officer from the civil administration invited a delegation from the Palestinian Water Authority to come to their headquarters to meet. The head of the Palestinian delegation, reviewing the Israeli report he himself had actually written, opened it to the recommendations and said, "We can live with this." After this initial approval in 2021, and after conferring with both sides, the Track 2 team engaged a Palestinian engineering firm to provide a detailed design of the trunk line for the treated effluent conveyance from Al-Bireh to the Jericho region.
The engineering firm worked closely with all involved, organizing joint field visits between Israeli and Palestinian officials to resolve technical problems. Through Track 2 applied environmental diplomacy, the two sides have gone from not speaking to each other to full cooperation. In July 2022, after receiving the final detailed engineering design of the trunk line, the Israeli Civil Administration finally issued a building permit to the Palestinian Water Authority.
Al-Bireh treatment plant is an important part of our wastewater plans at the Palestinian Water Authority to reuse the treated wastewater through the West Bank and Gaza to provide Palestinian farmers with much needed water for agriculture. It is a giant step forward. Hopefully we can build on that.
Polluting the water of Wadi Mikhmash does no favors for anyone, regardless of their nationality. What the Track 2 team helped get done was crucial for the environment and the wildlife of Wadi Mikhmash and Wadi Kelt.
This represents a significant increase of available water to the Jordan Valley farmers. And this also will help in food security and livelihoods to the people in this area.
We need this water. It's very important for the farmers. Our big problem here in the Jordan Valley, Palestinian farmers, is the shortage of the water. The change of the climate, we feel it. And our rights in water between us and our neighbors is not fair, sharing resources. If we have this water, the recycled water, we can go for more cultivating and for better agriculture also.
Since the successful negotiations over the Al-Bireh trunk line, several other Palestinian municipalities have reached out to ask for help solving municipal wastewater treatment problems. In addition, the Track 2 team continues to advance solutions for Wadi Muhmas to reduce pollution and protect the aquifers and the nature reserves for the benefit of all people in the region. Facilitating an agreement on a building permit for a treated wastewater trunk line through the heart of the West Bank is a major accomplishment. We now turn to the international community to support the building of this pipeline, which will prevent the pollution of shared aquifers and nature reserves and provide agricultural water to Palestinians in the Jordan Valley, strengthening the economy and food security of Palestine.
Thank you, everyone. We hope you had a quick refreshment. We're going to be moving out now to the second part of the day. As you all can see, I'm not Danny Shek. Danny had to leave for a very important activity in the Czech embassy, and I'll be taking over for him for the next half. My name is Barak Damour. I've been working. Thank you. I've been working for the Arava Institute for the past 2.5 years or so, mainly under the hat of alumni coordinator. So as Tareq mentioned at the beginning, we have an amazing cohort of around 1,600 alumni from all around the region and all around the world. And I think we had some conversations at the beginning about hope. And for me, we all have a different source of it. For me, this cohort of alumni is really what gets me going every morning doing this quite difficult work. This is a group of people that are dedicated to keeping together in the most difficult circumstances in a mixed community of Israelis and Palestinians and Jordanians, and still wanting to come together and find solutions and talk to one another. I don't do this job by myself. I have two amazing colleagues, Hoda Barakat and Mohammed. Unfortunately, both of them weren't able to be with us today because there has been a lockdown over the West Bank since the beginning of the war. No permits are being given to Palestinians to come, and of course that makes our job much more difficult in our mixed work. My other hat is I'm managing for the past few months this project, Jumpstarting Hope, which later in this conversation you're going to hear more about. I want to say that for me, what has been one of the biggest lessons working on this project has been that how unimaginably easy it is to destroy and how incredibly difficult it is to rebuild. Difficult and complicated and expensive and lengthy. We will have a lot to talk about in that, but of course before you're starting to rebuild, you need to understand what you have on the ground. And for this, we have our two amazing interns, Dr. Mariam and Elaine Donderer. Yes, it's very, very well-deserved applause. Both Mariam and Elaine have been working for the past few months on a very comprehensive and thorough report on the humanitarian and environmental impacts of the war in Gaza. This data is incredibly important for everyone trying to work on reconstruction. Mariam is an intern under the Center for Applied Environmental Diplomacy under David Lerher, and Elaine is an intern under the Center for Transboundary Water Management under Clive Lipshin. I'll invite them up to stage to walk us through it. Thank you.
Hi, you hear me?
Hey. Okay, we will start first with introducing ourselves. Welcome everyone. My name is Mariam Abdelhai. In the last few years, I have been researching and specializing in peace building and community building. And currently, I'm an intern at the Arava Institute in the Department of Environmental Diplomacy.
Hi, my name is Elaine Donderer. I'm a researcher and consultant with the Arava Institute, focusing on water management there, but my background's actually in disaster management, and that also helped us a lot in our research. Actually, can we pull up the screen of the presentation, please? Yes. Here we are. So we want to take this opportunity today, and first of all, thank you for having us, to talk about the environmental and humanitarian impacts of the war in Gaza, to really understand the magnitude of the war on shared resources, on our transboundary agendas, and understand how we share those ecosystems also in the future, particularly at the nexus of food, water, and energy. And just before we start, I want to say that there is big limitations on data availability and access, But through Mariam's amazing work and through many partnerships with other organizations and experts, we were able to fill in some of these gaps with human insights, and want to encourage everyone to keep on collaborating and data sharing so we can keep filling in those gaps and validate all of the findings that we will present to you today. And Mariam, please take it away.
Yes, so we will start first and looking at the key facts about Gaza before the 7th of October. I want to say that something inside of me wants to say Gaza, but since when I'm say Gaza, my brain switches to Arabic, so I will go with Gaza. And we want to understand, like, first the basic things to understand how the magnitude and extent of the impact of the war in Gaza is. So as we see here in the map and with the shades of brown, Gaza is a densely populated coastal region that, also here in the picture, that is located along the Mediterranean Sea, bordered by Israel and Egypt, and it's part of the Palestinian territories and has faced ongoing conflicts and humanitarian crisis. As you can see from the fence and a border crossing, Gaza has been under blockade and siege since 2007, severely restricting movement of goods and people inside and out. The siege extends also into the sea and restricts in fishing as well. This led to 80% of the people relying on humanitarian aid for to meet their basic needs. And now we're gonna look closer to some basic human needs and services before the 7th of October. In electricity before the war, Gaza has faced chronic electricity shortages for decades, with power being available only between 4 to 12 hours a day, primarily relying on Israel as its energy provider. This is leading to 80% of their electricity needs being unmet. And next is water. Before the war, Gaza was water supply was extremely fragile, with many individuals having only 80 liters per day, which falls under the 100 liters per day that is necessary to meet basic human needs. And food, that half of the popularity already before the war was had food insecurity and was relying on food imported from outside. The chronic deficit in basic services are especially affecting vulnerable population like children. And here we can see in the graph that Gaza's biggest population group are between 5 and 9 years. Exactly. So they are the most affected from these shortages. And despite all of these challenges, people in Gaza continue to showcase tireless efforts for innovation and resilience. For example, here this project in the picture, such as rooftop farms and hydroponics. They addressed food insecurities and empower their communities to become more self-sufficient and environmentally conscious.
Yeah, all of these efforts, and we want to keep them going as well, but they become even more difficult when we look at the water case study in more detail. So even before October 7th, we have quite limited water infrastructure and a quite nested network of facilities. And we know that most of the population, as you can see in the pie chart here, 78% rely on local water wells, which take saline waters from the underlying aquifer for non-potable purposes mostly, but this extreme reliance on deep wells makes people more vulnerable to any kind of destruction of these facilities or contamination of the aquifer where the water comes from. For potable purposes, people completely rely on tankers that have very high prices for the water, or they even have to buy bottled water. So you can only imagine the kind of vulnerabilities that stem from such a network. So we need to think about smarter solutions. What are smarter solutions? Wastewater is one thing that comes to mind because every drop counts, right? But even with wastewater, we see there is an existing municipal wastewater network in Gaza, but the capacities are over what the population needs. So here are some example facilities. You can explore this map later in detail. I'm going to talk more about the public availability of it. But what really matters here is that you can see even in the north, where we have facilities with higher capacities, they are not enough to cover the needs of the population, especially in the south, Khan Yunis and Rafah, where we know that people are relying on porous cesspits or septic tanks that can also lead to further contamination of the aquifer with pollutants. Furthermore, the pipelines cannot sustain the volumes of water that are encountered in Gaza, which leads to more flooding, sewage overflow in the streets, and thinking of how many children there are in Gaza, this is really something we need to keep in mind as we look at the impacts of the war going forward.
And now we will discuss the impact of the war, starting with water and water infrastructure. As we all know, water is essential for life, and its scarcity has long been a critical issue in Gaza, even before the war. Water, within the first month, more than half of infrastructure, as reported from OCHA, has been destroyed or needs repair. A figure likely higher today to the ongoing bombardment.
Yeah, so you can see this numbers from October. We know it's higher. So what did we do? We took a map of UNOSAT, which is the satellite agency of the United Nations. We looked what is the damage density and where are all the damage sites that we know are confirmed, and we overlaid it with the existing water infrastructure that we know of in Gaza. Still, these maps will keep being updated, and we really welcome everyone's contributions. But what we see in these maps is, and also from reports complementary to that, is that we have some key facilities where we know for a fact that they have sustained damage. For example, the coastal seawater desalination plant in Gaza City, as you can see, maybe not so well on the pictures, is that the site of the facility has been hit by an airstrike. We also know that the Tel Zatar was a water reservoir in Jabalia, which used to serve more than 70,000 people, has been adversely damaged. If we look at pumping stations, both for sewage and stormwater, this is just one example, the pumping station 7B, which used to treat wastewater for almost 200,000 people. Now is fully incapacitated. Although there were repairs, it just kept getting destroyed, and we have continuous overflow of sewage into neighboring agricultural fields and residential areas. Furthermore, the Abdul Salam Yassin Water Company, which is located in the central Gaza Strip, they're pretty well known for supplying equipment to international aid organizations. Also here we have confirmed damage at multiple locations of the site. And last but not least, because we really have a heart for wastewater at the Arava Institute, gonna give some more focus to that. Oxfam reported already, I think as far back as February, that all of the sewage pumping stations and wastewater treatment plants were closed because of electricity shortages and the continued airstrikes. And the consequences of that are quite horrifying.
So the destruction of all these wastewater plants and pumps led to untreated sewage being dumped into the environment. This sewage follows two main pathways. One, some of it will infiltrate into the ground and pollute the soil and reach the underground waters. And some of it will be traveling on the surface and eventually seeping into the Mediterranean Sea and other water bodies like Wadi Gaza, impacting all ecosystems that depend and live around these waters. It's crucial to recognize that Gaza shares transboundary waters with the surrounding to grasp the effect of the pollution on ecosystems and human across borders.
Yeah, so the coastal aquifer is one example. As you all may know, Israel gets a lot of water from it. The Egyptians get a lot of water from it. So any contamination affects really everybody. The same thing goes for Wadi Gaza, which actually originates in Hebron in the West Bank and runs all the way westward through Beersheba and back into Gaza. And it's a very important ecosystem and well known for its biodiversity. Mariam's going to tell us some more.
And many local and migratory birds and animals are living there. So this is important to see, because to understand the connectedness to the surrounding and also to the whole globe. Also, I want to mention the Mediterranean Sea, because all the sewage that and toxins that are released into the Mediterranean Sea will affect also Israel and its beaches. Like, for example, 2017, they had to shut down the Zikim beach, and also Ashkelon's desalination plant needed to close because of the organic matter in the water. And here we have some examples of birds that we all know and love that are migratory and will have something in their bodies that do not belong there. We don't know the effects of it yet, but we can think what it might do.
So we do know that wastewater affects us all, not just birds and nature, but us as humans. And it's particularly grim if we think of how young the population in Gaza is and how much more affected children are by contaminants in brackish water streams that many people are now forced to consume. As you can see in these imageries of people standing to get water, many of the water sources people are consuming now for drinking are really not appropriate for drinking, and it leads to, next to all of the direct impacts of the war, such as airstrikes and whatnot, hospitals and public health facilities are much overcrowded because of these secondary effects on the environment and on human organisms. And this is really an issue if we think more of a One Health perspective, right? Nature health impacts animal health impacts human health. We're all interconnected, and one thing will always lead to another. And this is exactly what we see in the context of war as well. If our soil is contaminated, we're gonna ingest it. If our waters aren't clean, it's gonna come back to us, and just so we again impact the water streams that lead to other countries. We really also with this presentation wanna encourage everyone to think of that interconnectedness and think of how we share all of these resources. It's not just a political conversation, it's a conversation about us as human beings.
And researchers and medical professions also raise the concern that over the rise or spread of antimicrobial resistance, that bacteria will not be treated because they will become more resistant. And this comes when there is a bad quality of sanitation and bad quality of water. So with the World Health Organization is warning that water-related diseases will surpass military violence in fatalities, showing that it is urgent to intervene.
And what even further compounds this water crisis is a lack of energy. So even before the war, we saw that there was a lack of energy, but there were many projects and investment to come up with alternatives, such as solar. For example, one very notable, or two notable projects by the World Bank Group in the Gaza industrial estate of really planting solar panels all across the estate have now been confirmed to be destructed. I don't need to tell you, you can see it for yourself. That there is no energy supply coming from these facilities anymore. We also have confirmed damage of some of our partners' projects, Gaza Life Power Co., who had built a quite considerable solar field that has been confirmed to have sustained damage but can still be repaired. And we can expect the same trend for other projects like the Gaza Transitional Development Assistance Project, a GIZ funded project. So yeah, really that We see a big impact on these infrastructures, and similarly with food security. This is just overlaying the damage by UNOSAT reported October and January. Reminder, we're in June. That you can really see the both the airstrikes but also ground invasions, which cause soil compaction and can be harmful to agricultural fields, have severely impacted all agricultural areas, including greenhouses, orchards, livestock. So really we can expect more food insecurity through this, and Mariam will elaborate a bit more on the...
Yeah, already people in Gaza depended on food import, humanitarian aid, and now the population is facing severe food crisis, exacerbated by limited and poorly facilitated aid deliveries. As of in March 2024, this year, 95% of the population experienced high acute food insecurity. Here we can see it's phase 3 and above. And projections suggest that within July, half of the population, which is 1.1 million people, will reach into phase 5, which is catastrophic food insecurity, meaning that every day people will die from hunger and from famine. The humanitarian impacts become even more evident when looking at destruction of building and related hazards.
Yeah, so what you see here is again a UNOSAT damage map focused on housing damage and residential units. We're going to look a little bit at what the impacts have been. So if you destroy everyone's housing, of course people will need to find new locations to shelter themselves. So what has been happening a lot is internal displacement, as was mentioned multiple times for some families. And people are forced to live in shelters, temporary camps, as you can see in one of these videos, makeshift shelters, sometimes supported by international organizations, but really the conditions in these camps are quite tough to cope with. One thing, for example, being the paradox of water scarcity existing alongside flooding and storms and strong winds that particularly in the winters were severely affecting people sheltering. But also the accumulation of garbage and solid waste near refugee tents where people are playing, children are eating. It attracts a lot of animals, pests, and you can only imagine the risks that stem from these kind of environments. So if we look at the damage, we know that by February, more than a third of all buildings were destroyed or damaged. We know that the north, the south looks very different now. But why do we want to understand it? We want to understand it because we want to look at the impacts of building destruction. When a building is in its original shape, there's no such thing as negative health consequences from it. But if explosives are a part of the equation and the building materials get compacted into microparticles and tiny particles, it can free any toxins that are still inside. So if you just see these pictures of Jabalia refugee camp, you can kind of start to imagine the impact of what it would mean to inhale such things. Whereas in Jabalia, just like with 9/11, we know that there's asbestos confirmed in the buildings. All of these toxins are released into the air. People are inhaling it.
Yeah, and it's covering Gaza like a blanket of dust and toxins that people will inhale into their bodies, and they will have long-term health risks.
Another risk being, as you can see, even just here, you're trying to provide, maybe you're on the side, you're trying to provide first aid, but you're yourself at risk of being injured just by walking around such a site. Also, a lot of the loved ones and people that are buried under the rubble are not properly buried or excavated and can thus cause further risks for long-term health conditions.
And here's some example of long-term health conditions that we know from past experiences like catastrophes like 9/11 and wars. For example, respiratory diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, cancers, and mental health conditions.
So yeah, the evidence is really strong, but still there are so many toxins we don't know enough about. So we want to encourage all researchers to really take a close, hard look at this particular context, because we're talking about a looming threat to our collective future, and the same we do with greenhouse gases. Now we have a strong international community calling for more climate action, calling for better reporting of greenhouse gas emissions, also war-related ones. And we just want to say that you really can't do any environmental sustainability effort at this point without also addressing peace building. So it needs to be a vital component of any kind of conversation we have about climate change, to ensure the long-term protection and well-being of people.
Yeah, and also we need to address the emissions that come with war, before war, during war, and also after war with construction. And
yeah, like reconstruction in itself could be another thing that causes more greenhouse gas emissions, but we already have solutions. We have solutions like from local people even that use the rubble, filter out the toxins, make new building materials. We have other solutions like off-grid technologies that you'll learn about more later, but really the answer is there. And just so it was said by the head of state of Ukraine, Zelensky, who really reminded us that our planet cannot afford another war. So the time is now to come up with a more holistic humanitarian response effort, one that integrates environmental sustainability at every step of the way. It's really not just about adapting to a disastrous environment. It's about how can we transform underlying vulnerabilities like we've learned from before October 7th. How can we give people learning capacities to take the next step and imagine a political horizon. And we can do all of that, yes, using technologies, but also rethinking how we think of this region as a transboundary ecosystem that we all share and are impacted by just as much as the other person. So at this point, huge thank you to everyone who contributed, all the partners, Mariam, she did amazing work. I just want to add that this map and all that you've seen is a living document that we want to make publicly accessible. We want to keep updating it. We want people to be critical about the data, and we want you to contribute. So please feel free to reach out. Yeah, we'd love to stay in touch.
As well, we have a report that is published, and you can have even more data than today, and you can look into the details and have a better look of the environmental and humanitarian impacts of the war. Shukran.
Thank you very much to Elaine and Mariam. As they said, the full report and the living document is available on the Arava Institute website. You can scan this QR code. There's another one downstairs that you can scan, or you can find it also on all social media, and it's accessible to all. Quick public announcement. David here is looking for Rachel from the Paris Center up there. There you go. Our next guest, we're really privileged and honored to bring up to stage and to come visit us. He came all the way from North Carolina in the United States, Dr. David Hasan. David is a neurosurgeon in Duke University in North Carolina. Not only is David a medical expert, David was one of the first international doctors to enter Gaza since the beginning of the war and offer medical support to to the hospitals there and to treat the wounded inside of Gaza. David is born in Kuwait to Palestinian parents and traveled into Gaza with a team of doctors to do incredibly challenging work under incredibly challenging conditions. And he's here to share with us his lived experience. Thank you, David.
Afternoon. It's really an honor and privilege to be here with you guys and share some of the facts and some of the images that I took personally during this trip. I want to say it's its current status of healthcare in Gaza, and it's really a very difficult, polarizing topic, if you will. And I want to start with what happened. October 7, it was catastrophe. Even for the people in Gaza, and I will tell you, even the people in Gaza, they all, not all of them are Hamas. More than 80% are really against Hamas. And through my 2 trips when I was in Gaza, I personally heard that again and again and again. And so it's really what happened on October 7 was complete catastrophe. Changed this region and changed people forever. So I'm going to a little bit talk about what happened in Gaza because October 7 set the stage for the healthcare there. And since then, everything changed completely. But we need to kind of understand this map. It is really important because you could see right here, because of the war, Gaza was divided into 4 territories. North Gaza, above the river, Middle Gaza, Khan Yunis, and Rafah. And the reason of that is because anything north has been nothing but catastrophe. Nothing has gone there till recently, till May. They was completely isolated. Everything is exaggerated. No food, no water, no medicine, till approximately 4 or 5 weeks. So because of that, really the distribution of aid and help has completely, it was unequal, uneven. And if you remember, before the war, there was about 500 trucks entering Gaza on a daily basis. And this next slide you will see, since the war started, the maximum trucks entering Gaza were about 300 trucks per day. And after May 7, the Rafah crossing, even it dropped. You can see right here, thank you. You can see right here, after May 7th, all these trucks are, even with the PR, there was not enough for aid to enter Gaza. And you see right here is about 91 trucks per day average. Maximum got to is about 140. So despite all this catastrophe, and the reason why you could see it will all fit together, this is where, why is it important? If you look at what's happening in the healthcare in Gaza, it's like a level 5 hurricane. And you can see this in the pocket, the trauma, all this, what we see in social media, all this horrible imagery of injuries, death, and everything, is actually a small pocket of what's going on in Gaza. And as an example, the bigger one is non-communicable disease. You have about 350,000 people are not getting any help. Those are people who have chronic illnesses like dialysis, cancer, hypertension. People who have an active MRI cannot get any care at all because there's not enough. The system is geared only to treat trauma, and it's not sufficient itself to sustain care for trauma. And the biggest one, I call it the tsunami, is an infectious disease. 1.1 million now experiencing at least some infectious disease, either diarrhea or upper respiratory infection. And if this really is not treated, you have a huge problem. It will dwarf the trauma completely. I personally, after the first time, I got COVID, even though I was vaccinated. And my wife felt very sorry for me. They flew me in first class, and I didn't take a shower, I didn't eat. The second time I had a virus, and I had gastritis for almost 2 weeks. And so if this not adequately addressed, you will have in the next few months over 1 million people are dying. That's huge. And this is all augmented by famine because there's not enough food getting in. Now there is, but there's a huger, bigger problem than food is distribution of the food. The trucks are entering now. There's about 1,000 truck is right by Kerem Shalom, ready to go, but they cannot be distributed because of the active Zor, and they cannot move around. And if it goes to one area, it cannot go to the other area evenly. So all that together, and the sanitation, and you'll see pictures, all this is augmented what's going on. Every single person we operated on died. Why? Because no antibiotics. They all have infection. And because of the environment there. These are the ingredients that will led to the collapse. Now, when I started this talk, I was saying it's actively collapsing. But now it's completely collapsed, and even worse after what happened takeover of the Rafah crossing. Bed capacity for 2.2 million people. There's only about 400 bed capacity, the entire Gaza. It only one hospital, 250. There's no electricity, water, food, fuel, not enough. The only people who are active are surgeons. Internet to kind of communicate. So all these things are leading to the collapse. But when we try to build this, we have to address each one of them, if you will. So this is my North Compass. This is my moral compass. This is my North Star. Is humanitarian aid must be blind to race, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, and nationality. If you are a human being, you are guided by this. I mean, I can't tell. This is Jacob. Everybody remembers Jacob's story. This is the kid that when I arrived, a mass casualty came in. He was the only one who was rescued from his family. He was dying. Because we're not enough ventilators and not enough ICUs, we had to take the breathing tube out of for him, which can be survived, but we have to give it to someone else. We thought it was better. And I took a picture for him, and I couldn't find his family. And I looked and looked, and I just couldn't allow this kid to die without any family member around him. So I thought of him as my own son, and I named him Jacob. That's what I would name if I have a son. And I held him, and I cried for him, and then we wrapped him and buried him. And when I went the second time, I went to his grave. This is my daughter, Hannah. She's my inspiration because every person, every kid in Israel, what happened in October 7th could happen to my daughter, could happen to anyone in Gaza, because the only difference between my daughter in the United States and a daughter here in southern Israel or Gaza is that my daughter was born in the United States. That's the only difference. This is us with second trip. That was the first trip. I took every instrument with us. This is the second trip. Medtronic donated over $500,000. We're trying to fit everything in boxes and took these bags with me. And I was really worried how to enter them. But Senator Warren Buffett, Elizabeth Warren, I'm thinking money. I wish I could get his money. Elizabeth Warren, because I need his money to help me do my project. Elizabeth Warren, Congress Governor McGovern, the U.S. Embassy, and the USAID helped me to get through Egypt. I'm not going to go. It's not responding well. And so this is when I entered Rafah. This is what I saw. We were driving in a bus, if you will, and this is the first thing that hits you, the reality. We were the first group to enter Gaza after October 7th, and everything was for us as a black box. Before I left, I have to transfer everything to my wife's, because I have to sign a paper that if something happened to me, I cannot sue the UN or WHO. And when they signed the paper, it's like, enter Gaza on your own. They have nothing for us. We entered, no protection, nothing. And it was black box. And we were able to establish the logistics for all the NGOs after that. But this is what we saw. And you can see almost at that time, 1.5 million people are living in Rafah in tents, if you will. Now they all moved to Khan Yunis. But when we got to the hospital used to be the oasis, safety, relatively. When we got in the hospital, there's about 50,000 people living in the hospital. 50,000 in a hospital is 250 beds, probably three times the size of this building. And they're all living there. Look, this is how they're living, plastics. And this is what the young ladies talked about. You see, there's no infrastructure whatsoever. So trash, garbage, sewage, all accumulating. And it's next to the water tanks that the people are using. So that's why the infectious disease over there is raving. And there is a news about there's cholera. And if cholera gets to the water, the Israelis will be affected because the streams of the Mediterranean is going from south to north. And we already done some simulation on that, and it will affect, if it gets into the water, it's just a matter of time before it affects Tel Aviv, Ashdod, and so it is connected environment, Bill. This is the sewage. This is the hospital. So you have 50,000 people living in the hospital and using the bathrooms. And most of the time, it doesn't even work. So you are in the hospital, and the sewage is building up. This is clean. This is clean. It's for some reason, so I'm going to start showing some images, guys, and they are very graphic. I try to do as much as I can. I took a lot of images out, a lot of videos out, but I still have to be fair to some of the injuries I saw. And I'm going to show kids. These are some of the injuries that the kids have that I treated personally when I was in Gaza. The first time when I got there, the first wave that came of casualty, we had about 40 people. 20 of them, just by statistics, are kids. And only 2 are survived out of the 20 coming in. Few of the challenges when I was, not only there is no medical supplies, there was no medications, no anesthetics. We were performing amputations without any anesthetics. We were delivering C-section babies without anesthetics. People were burned 60-80% and no pain medications. And when you do the surgeries, there's no antibiotics and nothing. And you have kids that are young, and you're amputating their legs, and they're screaming because there's no medications. So one of the things we noticed over there, there's the hospital that I was there, the first time I operated both on European Gaza Hospital and in Nasser. And I was back and forth operating between, even though going around the IDF, and they recognized and they gave us like safe entry to kind of move around. But with these 2 beds, we only have, with 2 hospitals, we only have about 11, 12 beds, meaning operative rooms. And we have casualty. We were usually lining up in the hallway to decide who's going to go next, because you can get 30, 40 casualties coming. You only have 5 ORs in European Gaza Hospital. You only have 1 CAT scan that's working. And so people were in the line. And here I have 2 patients were dying, and we didn't have enough room. So I got 1, and I put them for the first time, which is against all codes of healthcare and medicine. I put them next to each other, and I was operating back and forth between of them, just to kind of come. And at that day, there was no water. So I was allocated a bottle of water for the day, and I used it to wash my hands. And at one point, there was no electricity. I brought my batteries and operating. So that's some of the challenges we faced there. This kid came in with a shrapnel that hit his eye, went through, And the reason I'm saying it is because we got the CAT scan, but all the 5 ORs were preoccupied. And so we were waiting in the emergency department, and then suddenly blood kind of gushed from his eye is like a fountain, and the carotid avulsed. So I had to open his neck with a scalpel. We use it, I used it, all we do is just dip it in the water because we don't have other scalpels, or dip it in alcohol. And so I had to open his neck, control the carotid, and hold the carotid for almost 2 hours till one of the OR opened. We went in, and I was able to save his life, but to die later from infection because there's no antibiotics. This pictures, I wish I can show you the videos for some reason. This is some of the examples who had a real severe fracture of the leg. I wasn't just a neurosurgeon, I was an orthopedist, I was everything at that time because there were very few of us. And after 3 weeks, came back and maggots. And you will see it, it's just coming out of his wound because there's just no antibiotics. The condition, the sanitations over there is horrible. Sometimes you walk with your shoes in the sewage in the hospital because of, so that's what the condition you're, here it goes, you can see it. Finally the video plays. You can see the maggots. And you see it day in, day out. This is a colleague of mine. We operated 24 hours together. For 7 days, I only slept probably 2 hours a day because of the volume of the cases. And as I told you, sometimes we operated in the hallway because there's no access to the OR. But he went home, and that's his house, and didn't find his family. So not only just they haven't been paid for 8 months. They haven't psychological stress. So in short, these are the needs for the healthcare. We did a group. I've been active since this. What we need is to immediately establish some field hospital in northern Gaza. At this point, after the last IDF activities in Jabalia, there are no hospitals left in northern Gaza, and there was about 500,000 people. They have no access to anything. We also need to kind of make sure that we have the vulnerable people. Women are not getting in care. The only women hospital was Emirati South, and now is deserted. And so there are a lot of women are not getting health care, and as I said, delivering under horrible, horrible conditions. Food, we have to kind of not only just get the food inside, we have to find a way to get it to the people. There's no one can distribute it evenly to these pockets, because what happened is people are islands, and you need to get these trucks to people. So at this point, as of yesterday, there was about 1,000 trucks are just sitting in Kerem Shalom because they cannot be taken inside. And what's happening is there's some of normalization, but in an abnormal way. There's gangs, and because there's no, it's anarchy at there. Food, we talked about it. Water, already addressed that. Education, I mean, 700,000 kids have not had school for almost 8 months. Protection for kids, there's about 17,000 kids, which is my project that I'm working on without any family members or relatives. They're wandering around in the camps without anyone help. And so, gender-based violence, because of this, some of the women are being abused, unfortunately, and I saw it firsthand. And then we have some bombs. I witnessed it myself, a 2000 bomb made in the US, just sitting there, not exploded. So that thing is, these are some of the Duke University. We started an initiative. I'm very proud, Duke here, Blue Devil. We have, we tried to, unlike other campuses, we didn't, kids didn't protest, because when I came in, I worked with the provost, and what we try to do is, because these kids have a lot of emotions and they cannot channel them in the right way, and there's some people, agitators, are taking advantage of them. So what we did is we directed all their energy into projects. And so together, So together now we have Palestinian and Arabs and Israeli and Jewish kids are working together on these projects creatively. I mean, the project they're coming out with is just I'm sitting there, I'm like, the way they think, and so these are some of the projects they are working on it. One of the things, like one kid is, we have in Gaza now over 100,000 amputees, and these kids are like, because they have Lego, so they decided like, okay, we're gonna get a prosthesis by making it as a Lego thing, so you don't really need to kind of personalize it. You just put it together and make it work. Examples, these are, we're talking about, great, I'm asked to kind of move forward. These are some of the projects that creatively we're working through. But last but not least, there is a project we are got approved to kind of be part of it. It's $100 million, and I would like you guys, all of us together, to be involved to kind of change Gaza forever. And with that, I leave it to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. David Hasan. I think it's incredibly difficult to follow up after seeing those images and understanding the unimaginable challenges that the people of Gaza and the people trying to support it have to go through. Our next section is an expert panel that is going to dive a bit deeper and also expand about the topic of the humanitarian and environmental crisis going on right now in Gaza. I want to invite to the stage Dr. Clive Lipshin. He is Clive is the director of the Center for Transboundary Water Management at the Arava Institute. He will going to be facilitating this panel, and he'll introduce our guests as well. Thank you, Clive.
Thank you very much, Barak. I'm sure we all need at least a breath to process what we just saw from Dr. Hasan. I'm not quite sure how we can even just continue normally from what was presented there, but that's what we're all here to do. And so it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to bring to the stage three esteemed colleagues that each in their own capacity have a wealth and depth of knowledge that hopefully can move us into thinking about what needs to be done based on all the really hard, traumatic things that we've been exposed to today. So if I can please bring to the stage Eilon and Shira and Bernard. Thank you. Sit wherever. So, because we're always pressed for time, I'll just briefly. I'll take the opportunity to briefly introduce our guests. I'm going to be posing two questions, and each of you, of course, will have about 5 minutes or so to respond to each. So, firstly, starting from the outside in, we have Dr. Professor Eilon Adar. Eilon is a Professor Emeritus of the Zuckerberg Institute for Water Research at Ben-Gurion University. We have Dr. Shira Efron. Shira is the Senior Director of Policy Research, the Diane and Guilford Glazer Foundation, co-chair, Regional Cooperation Subgroup of President Herzog's Climate Forum. And finally, we have Professor Bernard Amadei, who's come all the way to us from Colorado. Bernard is a professor of civil engineering at the University of Colorado Boulder, but he is also the co-founder of Engineers Without Borders and the international founder of Common Ground Solutions Center. So please welcome. So to begin, what I'd like to ask each of you to reflect on is we were presented with a very comprehensive study conducted on environmental and humanitarian impacts of not just post-October 7th, but we all know and understand that there were many challenges, both environmentally and humanitarily, prior to October 7th. And each of you brings a certain expertise or a certain perception to these issues, and I'd like each of you to comment on these. And so we'll start with Eilon. Eilon, you are one of Israel's and renowned and both also internationally a groundwater expert. And groundwater, of course, is one of the most critical water resources for Gaza. What is your, how would you describe the water situation in Gaza prior to October 7th, specifically on the issue of groundwater? And also, because it was briefly addressed in the study earlier, on some of these transboundary issues with respect to what this means not only for Gaza, but of course Israel and to some degree Egypt to the south. Please go ahead. Thank you, Eilon.
Well, we already heard the situation was bad even before. So the very poor infrastructure regarding water, whether I'm talking about pipelines for domestic water supply or infrastructure regarding the treatment and distribution of the treated effluents, the poorer become even worse. You know, it is awful. The ground operation destroyed almost everything. And yeah, well, I don't have to continue from here. I mean, water is supplied by tanks, by bottles, and we already heard, you know, how much water you got even to the hospitals. It's bad. We have to distinguish between the two sectors, domestic water supply versus agriculture. Well, there is no agricultural activities anymore now in Gaza. Practically speaking, everything has been destroyed. So regarding groundwater, as you mentioned, we are in a better situation. They don't pump. We all know that I would say 99% of the water used by the agricultural sector in Gaza use groundwater, saline, brackish, treated, contaminated, but they used it. Now, they don't pump. We all know that in Gaza we have more than 4,200 wells. I would say 75 to 80% are illegal. And regarding that, no pumping. The groundwater have been recovered. The water levels were elevated. The seawater intrusion is now mitigated to some extent. So, you know, we see some positive point here that they stopped obstructing groundwater beyond the natural capacity. However, because what we heard about earlier this morning regarding the maltreatment of the sewage, or there is actually practically no treatment at all now, what is there get polluted in a much faster way. So, you know, if we look for the future, and this is my trend, to look forward and look for the future, we are facing a really big challenge to create a sustainable water supply to these two sectors in the future. It's not H2O, it's not the amount, it's mainly the quality of water. And therefore, I would say that we have to wait until the struggle will stop, and we have to think ahead of time what should be done in order to have an appropriate water supply for all. Now let me tell you my attitude. Although regarding water, naturally we are not connected. Yeah, well, it's the same coastal aquifer. However, the southern part of the coastal aquifer in Gaza is just barely connected to the north, so we are separated regarding that. But politically and morally, it's incorrect having a thirsty neighbor. Israel supply, based on this approach, the Israeli authorities, I don't know, were forced or they do it. Anyway, we used to supply water to Gaza even after the disengagement. 3 pipelines from the desalination plant in Ashkelon provided water to Gaza. I know from about 10 days ago information that 2 pipelines are active again, but there is no distribution system. I mean, water is flowing into Gaza, and it's not evenly distributed among the populations, so some of the camps are not connected at all. Yes, this is a problem, and I think that currently, under the current situation, what can be done is to increase the so-called the delivery of potable water devices into Gaza. I mean, it doesn't make sense to bring more mobile desalination plants or even water gen, air water extractors, because there is no energy. We need, I mean, they need generators. They don't have enough generators. If they have a generator, they don't have fuel. So, I mean, now we have to deliver water from these pipelines entering Gaza into the customers, into the camps.
Thanks, Eilon. If you can pass the mic to Shira, please. So Shira, your expertise is more with respect to the humanitarian sector. So from your knowledge and expertise, how do you see what was the situation prior to October 7th? Later on, we're going to get into hearing from all of you your suggestions on pragmatic ways to move forward. Eilon already mentioned a few, but if you could just reflect on how you foresee where things were with respect to the humanitarian conditions. We of course have heard about the medical issues and the huge issues with respect to food aid, and we're hearing things about famine and so on. But I think there are other issues as well that relate to the humanitarian situation. So if you could reflect on that. Thank you, Shira.
Okay, so thank you all for being here and inviting me, and thank you to the Arava Institute for daring to think positively when there's really no hope here. Also, if I may, before I answer your question, I really want to thank Arava for inviting Dr. David Hasan and for you coming here. I think the fact that you force Israelis to look at pictures from Gaza is really, you're doing us a service. The Israeli media does not show these pictures. There's a self-censorship. They're thinking they're protecting us. There's so much pain on this side, so they think they're saving us by protecting us from seeing all the pain on the other side. I think it's, as you said, morally and strategically wrong. So just on that. Because there was so much data here and the humanitarian situation in Gaza before was so bad, if you don't mind, maybe I'll just make a few observations of what has changed and what is a continuation of what we've seen so far. Because as you said also, and Elaine and Mariam showed, Gaza was sort of a basket case also on October 6th, right? All indicators were really, really poor. And some things, in a sense, we've just exacerbated an existing humanitarian crisis, but some things are quite different, and I won't go so much into the technical, if you may. So, but the problem is that when we look at the indicators before, right, we can talk about, so there's the water and the health and all these other issues, but also in terms of people, right, high unemployment, a very young generation, high fertility rate. 90% of Gazans have not left Gaza ever. So I think this is important for us to know, right? Gaza's, the size is 365 square kilometers. It's twice the area of Washington, D.C. Never left. And who knows if they will ever be able to leave. But this is where we are. And then comes October 7th, and maybe I'll continue with what Dr. Hasan presented. He presented mostly the case of the healthcare sector, right? It's really complicated. I mean, Hamas has always operated from hospitals. We knew that. I did reserves with Kogad. We knew that Hamas is operating from hospitals, right? They're serving as headquarters, hiding there, hiding ammunitions, comprised the neutrality. The IDF operates in hospitals. I won't say anything about whether we could have had more strains of force or not. But the fact is that we have damaged the public health infrastructure in Gaza maybe for generations to come. And when I look, and again, this is coming from the defense establishment, we look and we say, okay, we are actually addressing the humanitarian situation in the healthcare. There are now 11 field hospitals working in Gaza, which is really great. But field hospitals are not the answer to this. And going forward, this is sort of the dangers of the war itself, which we just saw that can't even address, the injuries of the war. But what about all these chronic patients? What about cancer? What about those needing dialysis? They can't get out of Gaza. Some countries take, but they can't take them all. And how do we treat those people? How do we treat them going now, but also going to the future? The second point, maybe I want to make, because here I took notes, is that I think, I really appreciate Mariam and Elaine's presentation, and I'm a technical person myself. I think we can talk technical all day, but Gaza is a man-made crisis. It's all political. And, we can talk about the humanitarian supplies and how many trucks go in. And this is not unique to our situation, by the way. So anyway, when we're talking, and maybe you hear this, a lot of discrepancy between what the UN is counting in 500 trucks and what's in the trucks and what goes in the trucks. And Dr. Hasan spoke about it before. And if I look at the number of trucks now crossing the border, yes, according to, there's no abundance against Israelis. Keep hearing in the news that Nutella is going in, and God forbid there's going to be Nutella in Gaza. But the fact is that there is maybe more than the minimum according to international standards going in. But the problem is political. It's the distribution. Distribution is not just roads. It's who receives the aid, who manages the aid, who protects the aid, and who protects the aid workers. And until this is solved, and Hamas continues to siphon off aid, and they're looters, and the UN workers are afraid to go ahead and get those aid, we're going to still be stuck with it. And that's why it's really not just a humanitarian discussion. And the second thing, and I think another trend that we've seen in this war that exacerbated issues that we had before, also is political, is this sort of, really complicated tensions between Israel and the UN, which makes it almost impossible to work constructively towards something that I think is the shared goal. So it goes from the top, right, leadership at the UN, Secretary General, UN Women, we know the UN is an anti-Israel circus. And also, there's the Israeli response, where wanting to declare UNRWA as a terrorist organization, but it trickles down to the working level people. And I think if there are representatives here in the international community, some sort of rapprochement, some sort of fixing ties between Israel and the UN is key, not only for now, for the war, but also for recovery and reconstruction. The fact is that whether we like it or not, Israel, we cannot do anything in Gaza without the UN. And the UN also needs Israel to allow them to work. So maybe I'll end with that.
Shira, thank you very much. So I'd like to ask you, Bernard, firstly, you've had some experience in other conflict regions. You've been active and been consulted on with respect to the Ukraine war. But one thing that I think hasn't yet actually been discussed here today, and I think it's really important, and I look forward to your thoughts on this, is another real issue here is the issue of capacity. What has been lost both at a human level, at a community level, at an institutional level. We can't respond to any of these issues to some degree unless we think about how to build back up capacity from the individual all the way up. So if you could maybe say a few words about how you thought of where Gaza was prior to October 7th on this issue of capacity and where you think of it is today, we look forward to hearing what you think about this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. I'm an engineer, and so I'm going to talk like an engineer, but don't worry, I'm not going to write any equations for you. I've worked in many different countries, mostly in remote areas in developing countries, and also in refugee camps. And I've seen some horrible things as well. And Dr. Hasan mentioned really tore me apart as I was watching the pictures. I've seen children die in front of me in Mali with the big eyes, and women coming to me and say, do something about it. I've seen children blow up in front of me in Afghanistan on landmines. Believe me, those experiences change your life forever. The world is crazy. And the problems that you have seen here, that we are seeing in Gaza, you have them in pretty much many places around the world. Ukraine, you could show the very similar pictures. Sudan, you see the similar pictures. The Congo, similar pictures. Ethiopia, similar pictures. And so what do we do about it? That's the big question. I'm an engineer. I told I'm not going to talk about what we could be doing. It's what we need to do now. I have a hard time with the concept of the day after. There has been a day after for the past 75 years, and nothing has changed. So unless we have a day after sooner or later, well, good. But in the meantime, it's not the day after that we are after. It's the day now. What do we do now? Right now, as we speak, as we listen, as we have good food, as we have good company, there are children 65 miles away, 65 kilometers away, who are dying, women who are dying. That's unacceptable, period. It's unacceptable. It's a flaw in humanity. So what can we do about it? Projects, why I think I'm so excited about the work that Arava is doing, Project Hope. Imagine one of us, each one of us, bringing a drop of hope into a bucket of hope. Hope is a verb. Peace is a verb. It's a process. And peace today as a verb is different from peace yesterday as a verb. How do we make this world a better place? Each one of us. Talk is cheap. Action is very difficult. And when it comes to Gaza, where would I start? I would start pretty much very quickly in repairing as soon as possible, as quickly as possible, what is broken. There are probably hundreds of water pumps that are broken. There are energy systems that are broken. Step number one is repair. Repair ASAP. Repair starting yesterday, and that's why I think the project that the Arava Institute is planning to do is fantastic. It's about decentralized systems. It's about small-scale systems. That's what we call appropriate technology. That essentially solve problems. We are not going to rebuild Gaza with those systems, but what we are going to do first is to save lives. Saving one life at a time. That's powerful. If each one of us in this audience, 260 people, could save 260 people today, the world will be a much better place. You know how much money we are spending on military expenditure in the world. $2.2 trillion in 2022. You divide that by 365 days, 24 hours, 60 minutes, 60 seconds. It turns out to be $70,000 a second spent all year long on military expenditure. What could we be doing with $70,000 a second in making the world a better place, folks? Yes, it's easy to applaud. I applaud, I admire you applaud. What are you going to do about it? I appreciate that, your compassion, your empathy. It's beyond sympathy. It's beyond empathy. It's about compassion, and then it's about acting up. Coming up to your question about conflict. Sorry, I took a divergent. I'm half French and half Italian, and passion is part of me. If I could sell passion in little boxes, I'd be extremely rich. Well, yes, there was capacity, not much though, in Gaza. There were some students in Gaza learning about engineering. There were students in Gaza learning about medicine. There were students in Gaza learning about agriculture. There were teachers in Gaza There were scientists in Gaza. These are still over there. There's a huge capacity there that we can build on. We are not starting from scratch. If we don't build on that capacity, Gaza will be a failed state. Is that what we want? Is that what the Israeli government wants? That Gaza is a failed state? And the answer is no. How do we build capacity? How do we map the same way as Mariam and Elaine presented that fantastic presentation there? Let's map the capacity of Gaza today, what it was before, and let's rebuild it. It's called capacity building. What kind of capacity? Governance, rule of law, technology, jobs, financial capacity, environmental capacity, social capacity. All those forms of capacity existed in Gaza prior to October 7, and of course, that capacity dropped very quickly. What would it take to rebuild that capacity with people from Gaza, not from the outsiders only? People in Gaza have the solutions if we give them a chance.
Bernard, thank you.
All right, I can keep on going like this because I'm fired up. And if I could go to Gaza tomorrow, I would go to Gaza there and fix some water pumps. So if anybody can give me a pass to go to Gaza, I'll take it right away, okay?
Thank you very much, Bernard. And again, we applaud the passion that you brought all the way from Colorado. You've more or less answered the second question, but I'm really going to try to ask you to really focus and be, this is a hard one. I want you to, three of you please, think as much as you can pragmatically, right, about what can be done. You all more or less addressed what can be maybe thought of in the short term, but there's another thing that we need to be aware of here is we need to respond now. That's why we're doing Jumpstarting Hope. We're not waiting for the war to end. We don't know when the war is going to end, but we are not sitting idly by. Nevertheless, we all hope and pray that the war will end, and it will end, it will end, it will end, but we need to think about also the long term. It's not just about, even though there's no discussion yet happening from our government on the day after, what about 10 years after? What about 50? We discussed earlier today, I think Dennis was relating to this, and also Daniel spoke about this. There's not just what happens with respect to 10 years away from Gaza, but 10 years and 50 for the region, for Israelis, for Israel. So if I can ask you, I know it's a hard one, but how do you think, what do you think can be pragmatically done, not in the medium term? I kind of think we've covered that. So let's think about the medium to long term, and you can decide for yourselves what do you think is medium long term. And I'm going to ask Shira, if you could please start us off on these thoughts. Thank you.
I don't want to pour like cold water on passion and stuff, but I feel like this is also where we can speak about what pragmatically can be done. And there's the humanitarian stage, and we can define humanitarian, and we're still humanitarian, but humanitarian after 8 months, it needs to evolve a little bit, right? We're not, today it's still like I see Kogat issuing, there's enough flour to produce 5 million pita breads a day. Okay, after 8 months, we need more than pita breads, and we need kids to go to school, and that's the humanitarian. And then we move to a recovery stage where we repair some stuff. What can we repair? But then we go to reconstruction, and when you look at reconstruction, I mean, there's so much that needs to be done. I don't know how many of you know these issues of how do we deal with dual use. Dual use are those goods that can be used for both civilian purposes and military purposes. So any pipes that go to a desalination plant that you'll have to do, but then they fall as rockets on our heads. This was a huge issue. I've done a consultancy for the UN just looking at dual-use issues, and this was a huge, huge issue before October 7th. It's going to be even a worse issue today. It's going to be very, very difficult to do. So how do we address those? And maybe there are smart engineering solutions to this, but it's, again, we go to the political framework. The second thing, I think, is also the cost. When you talk about reconstruction, the World Bank estimated $40 billion. There are estimates that are higher. Who's going to pay for this? I don't think Israel will. The international community provides generous funding at the moment for humanitarian supplies, but it's very small. But they keep telling us, and I think it's important that we admit it to ourselves in Israel, they keep telling us, we are willing to pay for humanitarian, but repair, reconstruction, forget it. We're not putting in long-term, both funding, a lot of money, right? But also this long-term commitment only to be destroyed again in several more years. And so I think this, for us, we Israelis here, that there's going to be like this magic coalition of Arabs, right? Saudi and the Emirates and Egypt, backed by Europeans and maybe with the US, and they're going to come manage Gaza and let us go in and out freely. And there's going to be those Palestinians mentioned, unspecified Palestinians, those who shall not be named, right? Neither Fatah nor Hamas. And this is all going to work. And I got to tell you, there are no unicorns in Gaza. This does not exist. We have to come to terms with the fact it's a two-party system. There's either Hamas or Fatah. Fatah is related to Palestinian Authority. Imperfect, not the best solution, but we don't choose our neighbors, and they're not going anywhere. So I think this is one thing. And then the international community, they say, well, you want us funding? You want our help in securing Gaza? You want our help in funding reconstruction and helping you management? You have to make a political decision. Are you allowing this terrible crisis to be leveraged into a political opportunity that goes in the process of a two-state solution? Now, I know to Israelis, Palestinian state, now it's a reward for terrorism, and no one thinks a Palestinian state is going to happen at the moment. There's no capacity for the PA. But unless we are willing, and our leaders, and those who are aspiring to be our leaders, agree to mumble the words and agree to a political process that takes us into a direction which the whole world is unified around except for us, I don't see how we go beyond the little repairs.
Thank you, Shira. It's my challenge as moderator, who's always having the whip, and I'm already getting signals, but I do need to allow Eilon and Bernard to respond. So Eilon, if you again pragmatically on water issues specifically, because that's your expertise, where do you see Gaza with respect to water infrastructure 10 years from now, 50?
All the technical and engineering parameters are really can be easily resolved. This is not a problem. The problem is, and I agree with you, Bernard, is building up the capacity. I don't know, Clive, but our alumni who studied and gained graduate degrees in water engineering and hydrology in our university reached Gaza 3 months before October. They're all gone. They're not there anymore. Luckily, they're safe, but outside of Gaza. My generation, the engineers, the water engineers, the hydrologists, those we could talk and design appropriate production of groundwater, desalinated water, treating the effluents, they are not there anymore. So building the capacity, we have to start from scratch. There is no one we can talk to. And we invested, David, literally, we invested a lot in the Arava Institute and in Ben-Gurion University to educate the next generation of water experts, hydrologists and water engineers. We managed to support them against all odds. They are not there anymore. Luckily, they are safe. Most of them that I know are safe, but outside of Gaza. So who will do the job? I don't have the answer. And such an education to educate a new generation, it's at least 5 to 7 years program. I'm talking about master and PhDs. We don't have the time. Now, the other parameter that we have to resolve, and this is the most important one, is not to just reconstruct the wells. We can do that. We bring the engineers from India, from Israel, from wherever you like, they will fix it. Chinese, in no time, will do it. Okay? The problem is, who is going to manage it? Water governance is the key issue here. Is the key issue. And mutual recognition that water must be kept beyond conflict.
Thank you, Eilon. So we're going to end off with Bernard. And Bernard, please feel free to express and bring forth all of that passion, because I think we need to all be, impassioned in this room. But if you could also think where you think we need to be, and already, Eilon and Shira have sort of indicated some of a roadmap, but from your perspective, where do you see Gaza 10, 50 years from now? And again, not just Gaza, but whatever's going to happen in Gaza is going to have ramifications across Israel and across the region.
No, absolutely. I don't have a clue of how Gaza is going to be 10 years from now. I hope it's going to be better than it is today, that's for sure. And then, and you raised an interesting point. I mean, the problem in Gaza don't stay in Gaza. I mean, it's an entire regional issue there. And that could have some consequences at the international level, right? So we look at water. Water doesn't know of borders. Air doesn't know of borders. Stupidity doesn't know of borders, right? We know about that, right? So to me, again, I'm a small-scale engineer. I do small-scale infrastructure. That's all I can understand. Really, right now, I do believe there's a need for immediate repair of existing infrastructure, as the other teams talk more about planning. Development, humanitarian development in general takes time, right? It's not something you can do in 5 years. I landed in Kabul in Afghanistan in 2003. The picture that Dr. Hasan mentioned showed about Gaza, and similar pictures of downtown Kabul, building broken down, people living in substandard conditions and so on. It took about 7 years until 2010 when I left there to see some infrastructure being rebuilt, schools being rebuilt, women being able to go to school. The development takes time. It may take 10 years, it may take 15 years, but the bottom line is that we move forward. We move forward, we solve small problems first. And that's what I like about your approach at the Arava Institute, is small-scale decentralized system. Deploy small-scale decentralized system. If one system breaks down, another one can take over the load there, right? So it's not just about water. It's water and energy and food. Without energy, water doesn't move, folks. I mean, it stays at the bottom of the well. So how do we create small-scale systems? And they exist. I mean, you guys at the Arava have, 10, 15 years of experience, right? I mean, it's a huge experience that can be used in Gaza. Again, I'm a small-scale engineer. I don't believe in big buildings and so on. On small-scale engineer, what can we do at the small-scale level to protect lives so people don't die? That's all I'm interested in. So people have basic food, basic energy, basic water. So, for many people in Gaza, staying alive by the end of the day is a full-time job.
Okay, thank you very much to all our panelists. We've run out of time. I apologize. Barak, if you want to take us to the next point in our schedule. Thank you. And thank you to Shira and to Eilon and to Bernard. Thank you.
Thank you for our panelists, and of course, thank you to Clive for amazing moderating skills. We're heading into the last section of our day. We're running a bit late, but I think maybe the blame is on us to think that we can bring in so many incredible speakers in such a huge topic into 4.5 hours. But we're doing our best. I want to invite to the stage Dr. David Lerher. David is the director of the Center of Applied Environmental Diplomacy in the Arava Institute. And just as important, David served as the executive director of the Arava Institute from 2001 to 2021. And I think David is accredited to turning the Arava Institute into an organization that I can say that I'm extremely proud of being a part of. So thank you, David, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Barak. I just want to mention that this is the last 5 minutes. I'm going to try and rush us through this. I know people have to go, so please, feel free. If you have to go, you have to go. I just want to mention that when you leave, down below, the Paris Center is hosting a picture and video exhibition from Ziv Cohen. We've talked a lot about trauma. It's pictures of trauma that Israelis went through on October 7th, and following that, it's an opportunity to see his work. I just wanted to say that with all the pain in my heart for my people, I feel I must expand my heart to hold the pain of my Palestinian friends and neighbors. I think that is only by feeling each other's pain that I maintain my humanity. When the war broke out in October, the Arava Institute, our partner, Damour for Community Development, immediately reached out to each other. During our previously scheduled weekly call, we first comforted each other. Thank you, Debbie. Dr. Debbie Sandler is a co-chair with Ashraf, with the Joint Implementation Committee. And during our previously scheduled weekly call, we first comforted each other and expressed our concern for each other's well-being. And we then asked ourselves, what can we, a Palestinian and an Israeli NGO, do? There was nothing we could do about the war. Our mentor, Dennis Ross, who was on the call, suggested that we begin to imagine the day after and how we could contribute to the rebuilding of Gaza and the rebuilding of trust. We are not large humanitarian organizations with the capacity to bring truckloads of food and water and medical care. Others can do that much better. We do not have the resources of the big international donors who will spend billions of dollars rebuilding houses and infrastructure. The humanitarian response must be immediate, but the rebuilding process will take years, and in the meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians will remain displaced, lacking sustainable solutions for water, electricity, sanitation, and health services. Prior to the war, Damour for Community Development and the Arava Institute worked together to find wash and energy solutions for off-grid communities in the West Bank and Gaza, atmospheric water generators for drinking water, mobile wastewater treatment plants for sanitation, desalination pumps for water for domestic use, and PV arrays for energy. Together, we decided to launch Jumpstarting Hope in Gaza to bring decentralized water, sanitation, hygiene, and energy solutions to green refugee shelters in Gaza, the green refugee shelters that Damour and their partners in Gaza have begun to build. I won't go through this, but things like meeting drinking water needs through atmospheric water generators. We've done this in the past in Gaza. We managed to get 7 water gen machines into Gaza prior to October 7th. We now know that 5 of those machines are still intact, and we are now working to restart them. Desalination equipment, meeting sanitation needs. One of our partners, Laguna Innovation, wastewater treatment, off-grid wastewater treatment. And as Eilon mentioned, all this is useless unless there's an actual energy system developed. We're working with many partners in Gaza to develop those as well. In addition, it's become critically important now to move from these tents to some type of more permanent situation. As Tahani tells me, she says, look, we're going to be living this way for the next 3, 5, maybe 10 years. We can't live in tents like this. We have to find other solutions. So we're working with Tahani and with her partners to develop green refugee shelters for 10,000 people in the Mawasi area. And once we've completed that project, we're moving to the north, opposite Gaza City, along the coast in areas that Israel has declared as safe zones, as zones that they will not attack. Damour has, with her partners, has managed to set up one large camp for 4,000 people and another camp for about 700 people. We're trying to work on a model of about 100 families, between 700 and 1,000 people. This is the Zomi shelter that Tahani mentioned that was established with 700 people. This is the layout of this green shelter. Our goal as the Arava Institute is to find the resources to buy the off-grid decentralized equipment which will run those toilets, will run those, will create biogas, will provide enough energy and electricity for all the needs, will desalinate water for drinking and for use, and will have a sanitation system. This is actually a larger camp that will be made up of 4 smaller camps. They already have identified, Damour has already identified an area in Gaza, in the Mawasi area, where we can, where it can be built. We're in contact with Kogat about getting permission that area will be untouched, or getting their agreement. I just want to finish. This is it. I want to finish with this opportunity for you guys. Okay, this is an opportunity. I'm going to show you how much it costs, right, to equip, to provide 100 families or close to 1,000 people with drinking water, water for domestic use, sanitation, and energy and housing. Okay, so a desalination unit for about the 100 families is about $50,000 for one unit that can produce 2 cubic meters of water an hour, $150,000 altogether. Electricity generation for 100 families. We've worked with Comet ME, one of the partners, to develop a plan for this. We're talking about total $400,000 cost to provide that camp that you saw previously, with the energy to run all of that equipment and to provide light and battery recharging, heating, cooking, whatever is needed. Toilets and wastewater treatment system, are we estimating about $170,000 for the 100 families. Caravans, we're building caravans. Our partners, Damour, are building caravans in the West Bank, and we're shipping them in pieces to Gaza, and the cost is about $1,000 per caravan. So altogether, a budget for 10,000 internally displaced persons. If for 1,000 people, it's about $1 million. For 10,000, we're talking about $10 million. We're talking about $1,000 per person. Okay, you can save, provide water, energy, sewage treatment, housing for $1,000 per person in Gaza, and we would love it if all of you would think about how you can contribute to this. We have a scan to donate up there. Pass this message on to all of your friends and relatives, and together maybe we can provide we can get our humanity back and create a human bridge of understanding and compassion and empathy by rolling up our sleeves and working to make this place a better Middle East. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank our incredible partners. Our speakers were amazing. You guys are all amazing that you stuck with us to the end of the program. And we hope to see you again. We hope to hear from you, and we hope to see you again at our next event. Thank you all very much.